Hello and welcome to another ARCHLine.XP webinar. My name is Untitled. I'll be your guide today, showing you everything you need to know about door and opening design. Now, this is one of the advanced courses of ARCHLine, so if some of the things I'm showing you would be a bit too advanced, then be sure to check to our website where you can actually find the preliminary courses in this regard. So when we talk about doors, the first thing to actually investigate is the basics of how to operate doors and windows, and for that you find interesting videos if you go to our website archlinexp.com/webinars. And here not only can you see the show what I'm doing now and the upcoming advanced courses, but you can go all the way to the bottom where you can find the basics of door and window design. So make sure you go back to the earlier sessions if any of these things what I'm showing you is not that understandable. But I will try my best to start from the beginning. So today's show is all about creating customized and bespoke doors and windows. Why do we have to do that? Well, that is because just like with any other software products, we are shipping the software with many door items, and you can obviously choose from this if you are working. So you can choose any kind of doors you want from the software, but this is a closed library, so the industry changes very fast. Fashions come and go, so if something new is coming into style, we won't be able to react that easily. So in order to get the most up-to-date data, sometimes you have to create your customized doors and windows. You need to know how to do that. So tomorrow's session is more about creating shapes which look like these images over here. Panel doors with side lights, or with insets, glass insets, 5 of them, 3 of them, or decorational patterns. So we learn about how to create those. And we also learn about how to bring in an extra additional element from the, let's say, the 3D warehouse, because maybe you already have a SketchUp file that you want to use. You need to know how and when to use it. As a reminder, I always encourage you to ask your questions on the right-hand side. So say hi to me in case you want to test if the chat is working. I will try my best to answer your questions as the show proceeds. Now, let's jump right in, and before we do the first tasks, let me remind you that if you go to our website, you can find all the content I'm showing during the show. So if you want to follow along and maybe even download the files that I'm using during this show, then you can do it on the webinar website or at the workshop tabs. So if you want to follow along, download the course guide and download the content, the files I'm using. As for the course guide, what I'm using today is actually a written content which has all the sizes, all the steps you have to take while doing what I'm doing right now. So it's a very useful content to follow along. Now, without having to talk too much about this, let's just get to the action. So in order to start from the beginning, I suggest we do some basic exercises, just a reminder, to show you how doors actually work in ARCHLine. So if you have a wall like this, let's say like that, and you want to position a door over here, you have several options under the building door menu. The basic one is you just choose whichever you like and just position it onto the surface. So nothing fancy about that. If you know the sizes of the door, you do the same thing, only this time you go with door with 2 points and you define the door like that. So these are the very basics, but what happens if you want to go with something a bit more elaborate? Let me just get rid of this abomination and go back to the project itself. So what I'm trying to create is a panel door, and don't forget, in our software there's a bunch of those. So if you go to the object library and you go to doors, indoor, and you go with paneled, you have 52 different models you can work with any kind of insets and see-through or non-transparent parts. But that is what we want to create. But what happens if we have an image for that? So this is the image I want to use in my model. So I don't want this white surface, instead I want this nice inset-y part. Now there are 2 ways to do this. One way is that you create a door with the inset. That's what I'm going to do later on. But if you want to work faster than that, you just want to copy paste the image onto the door. Now let's see how that works. In your webinar content, you have a bunch of files, including images, where you can just find the image that you're looking for. Let's say the image that I'm looking for now is this indoor panel number 1, for example. Drag and drop it into ARCHLine and just define a size like this. So let's just ignore this for a second. We are going to work on this. So Okay, we have imported the content. How do we know if it's going to be the same size as the door? Well, you can resize the images, and for that there's a very neat trick I'm going to show you now. So you go to drafting and you draw a rectangle. So you start with a starting point and you define the two sides of the rectangle. You have an X and a Y value, so that's what I'm going to use now. By hitting tab, you can decide which value you want to override. So let me say that this rectangle is going to be 1 meter wide. And now I have the ability to define the Y value, which is going to be 2.1 meters. So now I have the rectangle. Now I'm moving the image over there. So now I can easily distort the image to the right size. So nothing fancy about this. Now the next step is to save this into my library. When you do that, there are two ways to do it. You can either drag and drop the image into ARCHLine and then go right click, save as material, and you name it indoor door panel number 1. I think that's good. The category should be, I think, building, subcategory doors, and producer is generic. So let's just hit, let me just make a screenshot of the name, otherwise I'm going to forget that. So, okay, so I have now the image saved as a material. Do I care about the height and width? Well, not really. Let me tell you why. Because I'm not going to tile this element onto a surface. I'm going to use it as a stretched material. So what do I do then? I go to the object library and I'm going to look for indoor door panel number 1. So I'm just dragging and dropping it onto my door, and I say I want to replace this with another material on this particular object. Hit OK. Click on the door and you will see one particular problem, namely that, and let me just go to the 3D and jump right in. So the problem is that the insets are actually mirrored. So if you look on the outside and look at the inside, you see that the inset is looking that way, and on the outside it's not mirrored. It's looking to the right. So it's actually not, it's the same material. So you need to change that, because otherwise result is not good. Let me go to the properties and show you some other problems. So for example, we see that now the inset is looking to the right, and here it's looking to the right again. That's not good. That's not problem number 1. Problem number 2 is that even on the frames I have the same material, which I don't really like. So what do? I'm going to change the materials, but for that I need to have a mirror image of this picture. So let me just close this. And before I showed you how to import an image and how to turn it into a material, what I did, I dragged it and dropped it and then I saved it. But there's another way, there's an easier way, and that is, let me just do it like this. So let me just grab indoor panel number 2 and drag it onto the design center. And when I do that, I right away get into the material saving tab. So in this way, you don't have to care about, placing the image and saving it. Instead, you can just dragging and dropping it and it's going to be good to go, except that now, for the physical properties, I have to set up stretch. Let me just see the appearance. I think this would be good. I can define if I want to have like a wooden surface or anything. I'm not going to that in detail into now. I'm just going to say okay. And now I have another version of the same with the same door with another direction it's facing. So let me just open up the door and fine tune it. First, I want to change the frame. Well, the frame has to be something else, not this image, because, the inset doesn't look good. So let's just go to solid and change it to something else. I think maybe a beach panel. Maybe if we're too light, but you'll get the idea. Beach tree would be fine. Redraw. So now it's changed. It's better than using the image. And now the next task I'm facing with is how to flip the image here. And for that, there's no better way than to just go to the external leaf material. Let me just find it. And the external leaf should be something else. So let me just look for indoor door panel number 1. And here sorry, I have to change it again. So the internal has to be another one, and that would be internal. I'm sorry, it was indoor number 2. So there we go. So I have one direction, the other direction. The careful viewers might be asking me, Zoltan, why is this differently colored than the original one? That is because this version I have saved with a render style called wood, while the other one was a generic. So that's why the appearance is different, but I can change that later on. So let me just say okay, and now I can just quickly position the door like that. So now I can just override the original, and if I look in, I see that the insets are looking the right way, and I can just go to the properties and save this door into another library, and that way I ended up with something more customized. But you know, that's one way to do it. That's the fast way to do it. But if you want to actually have panels which you can see through, you have to be craftier than that, and I will show you that later on. But before I do, another important topic is about how to bring in elements into ARCHLine that you can use as objects of your own. So for that, the most frequently used platform what I'm downloading things from is called the 3D Warehouse. I think you are all familiar with that. That's a platform maintained and manufactured by the US company Trimble, and it's basically a large, I mean humongously large collection of user-made models. Doors, windows, beds, even buildings or chairs or anything like that. So you have to, here you have a very good chance of finding what you're looking for, but you have to be careful. These are not necessarily manufactured elements. The only thing that you have to care about here is that if you download something, you might end up with incorrect sizes, because these, more often than not, these objects are made by enthusiastic amateurs like myself. So you might not find them in the right scale or right color, so there's some afterwork needed, which I'm doing in this case as well. So what I'm looking for is a sliding door. If I type in sliding door, I would find a bunch of elements, so it would be very difficult to find the one what I'm looking for, but I know the person who created this. I know his name, so I'm just going to enter his nick, which would be make spin 2. Yeah, there you go. And here I need to find the sliding door, this one. Just a reminder, you always have to care about the polygon sizes and file sizes. I talked about this before. If you find anything about 50k polygons, then that's a no-go for a door. But if it's lower than that, go ahead. So hit download and download it as a 2020 SketchUp model. And now I ended up with a model that I'm importing somewhere where I can work on it. So let me put it here. Okay, you might be asking, Zoltan, why did you put this into the middle of nowhere? Why didn't you put it onto the wall? Well, that is because this is an object. So if I push this element onto the, you know, instead of talking about this, let me show you. So let's assume that there's a wall like that, and I want this door to be located in that wall. So let me just move it here. Let me just move it there. So okay, what you would see right off the bat is that the door is inside of the wall, but it's not cutting its space. Why is that? Well, that is because this object is actually nothing more than an object. So the software doesn't know by itself if it's actually a door or a window or whatever. So you need to designate this element as a door. Well, that's just one part of the problem. The other part of the problem is that how this door looks like, because this is not an industry standard two-dimensional representation of the door. Why is that? That is because when you import something into ARCHLine, the two-dimensional representation is nothing more than a top view of the elements. So if you look at it from above, you see the handles, you see the door as one piece of slab, but that's not good for you. You need to have a representation like this one. So let me just in fact move this door closer to here. And I happen to have a two-dimensional representation which I created as a two-dimensional group, and that is what I want to use as a sort of like a representation of this particular object. So several things to do. I need to change how the door looks like from above, and I need to change the materials. I think the materials first should be changed, because honestly this brownish color is not in sync with what I have in the model. So let's say I have a very nice kitchen design here, and I love this material. So that's what I want to use on the door itself. So what I do is I go right click, I say find material. Now I have this anthracite gray in my search bar, so I'm just going to go out here, and all I need to do is just grabbing onto the material, dragging and dropping it, and I'm going to replace one material with another one on this object. So I think I'm just going to go on and do it until I'm done. I think it's inset edge is not gray right now, and now it is. Okay, this one is good. The glass is not that popping, so let me just find something else, maybe a better glass surface. I think this blue glass number 2 would be maybe a bit better. So I'm replacing one with the other on this particular object. Last thing, I want to change this inset over here. I don't really like, so I'm just going to look for something gray, something that matches. So obviously you don't have to, maybe gray spelled with an E. There you go. So you don't have to go crazy with this, but that's just an idea to sort of make your door a bit more interesting. You could be changing the handle as well. I'm just going to use it as it is. So now it looks like the door I want to use, but it doesn't act like a door. It's still an object. So what I do, I go to the 2D, highlight the door, go to the local menu, and say that I want to edit this object and convert the object into a door or a window. Now this dialog comes up where I can define many things, but the first thing I always define is the two-dimensional representation, this over here. Now this bunch of lines I have already saved into my library, so I can just go to load from library, go to my groups, and look for sliding door 2D. So I'm just hitting OK, and now I see that the 2D representation is changing to what I want it to be. So next thing, I have to take care of these nodes. These nodes are showing the insertion points of the door into the wall. So you need to sort of align these edges with the nodes. That way the software would cut the wall exactly the right size. So if you don't have that figured out, then the result might be not that good. So next thing, the opening type, and that has to be a door. If you designate it as a window, then it's going to be elevated because the window has a built-in seal height, which will be taking effect unless you say that this is a door. Next thing, here's an option, add profile on frontal view for making the hole in the wall. And that is interesting. What should we do here? But by default, if the door would be one piece, you shouldn't have to worry about that because the software would recognize it's a rectangular element and it's going to make a rectangular cut. But in this case, it looks more like a U shape, like an inverse U. So you need to sort of check how the software tries to cut the wall. So let me just enable this option and hit OK. And now I can save the element. Sliding door webinar would be the name. Let me just make another screenshot, by the way, because otherwise I would forget the name. So that's just another software I'm using for making screenshots because I have a very bad short-term memory. So let me just say this is an indoor arched. Well, it's not going to be arched, it's going to be sliding. And the producer is generic. I could attach beam parameters if I want to. I don't have anything to add here, so let me just hit OK. OK again. And now the software does this. And I need to understand what is happening here. So now the software tells me that, listen, based on the current shape of the door, that would be the shape which would be cut out of the wall. Well, it looks good, doesn't it? Well, not really, because if I accept it as it is, then the wall would be inserted here. So it would be like a U-shaped cut. But instead I want to have a rectangular cut. So I need to get a little bit closer and delete a few of these nodes and make sure that the cut would be a rectangular one. Otherwise, result would be not the one that you're looking for. So let me just delete this, and just to be 100% safe, I'm deleting these nodes as well. And I think now I'm satisfied with what I have here. So hit enter, and now the door is gone. Well, not entirely. The original object is modified and the door is now in your library. So if you say sliding door, oh, was it sliding dash door? Yeah. And it's this one. So that is the one I want to add, and I'm going to move into my little flat over here. Let me go like this. And I want to position the door like that. So I'm just going to zoom in and dragging and dropping the door into the 2D. And the software says, how do you want to position this? The only thing you have to care about, not to say this, because if you place a door window non-hosted in a wall, that way you create a standalone door. but now we want to have one which has interaction with the wall. So let's just say place it from wall endpoint and place it wherever you want, like that. And when you do that, presto, you have a nice sliding door, which is, I'm proud to say, is in sync in terms of colors. If there's anything you want to change later on, maybe you don't like the handle after all, you just go to the object library, look for something metallic like this, dragging and dropping it, and say that you want to change on this object like that. So that way you change the handle in a second. So that way you can override that. It's up to you how you want to do that. Now the next task at hand is actually taking care of the door models that we see up here. And for this, there's a very elaborate tool which we call the Door and Window Wizard. Now we are going to look at how to create customized doors, but windows are actually the same story. So we start with the one with the side light. Now these images I have downloaded from the manufacturer websites, and I dragged them and dropped them into ARCHLine. So that was the original image. Sorry, I think that was with the side light. Here we go. And once I dragged it and dropped it like that, I added the dimensions and I retraced the drawing. If I delete this for a second, you see that the drawing has been redrawn, and that way I have lines. Let me show you why that it's important. The Door and Window Wizard works from door, new door, and here you have 4 options. Convert object to a door, we have just done that with the SketchUp library item. And then we go to the Door Wizard. The other 2 options we are not caring about yet. So let's go with Door Wizard. And the first thing we do, we have to define what is the original, the base, the inception of this door. So what is the main character? It is going to be one with one single panel, or maybe with a side light, or double winged top light, maybe, or anything like that. Maybe it's slanted. So these are the basics, what you can start your work with. So as long as the door that you want to create coincides with one of these schemes, you are good to go. So let me just go to door number 1. And the main parameters we have to figure out. Well, it's 1 meter wide and 2.1 meter high. I think that's good for me. Representation. This is mainly about how the 2D is going to appear. I want to show the threshold, so I'm just going to enable that. And the opening direction, like how the door is opened, I'm not sure if I can show you that. No. The opening angle, it should be an arc. I'm not going to mess with that. That is good for me. Next step, here comes the frame. So now we are caring about how the frame looks like and what is the main profile with which the frame is created. Let me show a few examples. So if I click on certain built-in profiles of the software, then you see right away in the 3D that it's going to create additional forms and shapes, because this item here, this Door Wizard, works very similarly to the furniture panel maker that I showed you a couple of weeks ago. It creates elements and holes and insets based on profiles. Let's go back to simple rectangle and check the sizes. The profile width should be 0.05 and the profile height should be, I think this is good for us. By the way, if the 3D doesn't appear by itself, doesn't update, you just have to click refresh. Next thing we have to figure out is the threshold, which is down here. So now I have a tiny threshold over there. Rectangular profile is good. I think the profile width and height is good as well, but you can change it to something else if you don't like that. Next thing to figure out is the panel, and mainly the material. So you can say that this is actually a wood, vanilla. I think beige is fine for me. I'm not going to go too fancy with that. Opening settings, opening direction, I'm going to change it, flip it to the right. And now comes the panel's geometry, which actually means how far the panel is from the side. So for that, I'm going to change the values over here, which is going to be 0.04. Let me just maybe zoom in so that way you see what's going on. Yeah, that way you see this this value changing. So it's going to be again 0.04, which is 4 centimeters. There you go. And the other side should be 0.04 as well. But with the threshold, with the bottom, I'm not going to be messing with. So that is quite alright for me. Now comes the edge profile, which is actually enabling. So a setting for how the edges would look like. And for that, the most important thing is that I have to find the edge what I'm satisfied with. I think this edge number 3 would be good, and the profile width, I have to change it to something else. 2 would be the width, 2 centimeters, and there you go. So you have a nice, like, rounded up sort of like surface. Not rounded up, but you get the idea. Next thing, I have to care about the inset. Now the inset is where you could add how the light here, like this hole, looks like. There are 2 ways to proceed. One is that you find the sort of like a profile like this. So just click on the one that you're looking for. There's many built-in elements into the library, so you can use whatever you want. Or alternatively, you can just go with a very simple rectangular one, so automated profile, and just work based on bindings and rules. So let's set up a rule here. Let's set up that the inset should be offset from the left with 59 centimeters, like that. Hit refresh to see what's happening. Okay, I see that now the software tells that here's the edge of the wing of the panel, and now 59 centimeters later there's the side light. By the way, if you want to ask where these numbers are coming from, it's here, so we know that it's 59 centimeters from the side and 15 centimeters from the other side. So let's just add that too. So 15 centimeters from the right. Hit refresh, and now I have the side light. The top and bottom are not figured out yet, so let me just consult with my 2D. So 18 and 22, so on the top it should be 18 centimeters, and at the bottom it should be 22. Hit refresh, and there we go. Now, well, one major problem with a side light like that is that it has a clear glass. Now, you don't want that for an entrance door because the neighbors could see what you're up to, so we don't want that. We have enough social distancing as it is, so let's just hit the paint bucket and look for another material for this part, and by clicking on the plus icon I can look for something else. Let's say a frosted glass surface would be fine, and now I see that it's better. Well, I think it's better. On the renders it would look even better. So I think we are almost done. The thing what I'm looking for is, I don't know about the side of this panel. It doesn't look that good, so I need to make it a rounded edge which extrudes from the side of the face of the panel. So what do I do for that? I go to insert edge profile, and I'm looking for another edge profile which would be based on my chart. It should be edge profile number 5. So let me just, there you go. It's still not extruding, so the width would be fine, but the profile height should be 5. So it's actually 1 centimeters going to the outside. Well, actually I want to align the profile to the middle. This is good for me. Other settings I don't have to care about. Well, the last thing maybe is the handle. But don't forget that when it comes to handles, you have one in the inside and you have one on the outside. So you have to change how they look. From the inside, I want to have a normal handle, which is maybe bronze colored. So let me just go for a bronze-ish material. On the other outside, I don't want that handle. I want to have something like a knob. And for that, I'm going to go with handle type and go with a sphere shaped. Or maybe I just changed the original one. Sorry, I want to change it to standard. Here we go. And go to outer handle. And now I am going to change it to a sphere shaped and change the material to, well, this bronzish would be fine for the outside as well. But the software allows you to mismatch them. So if you want to have a different color on the outside, on the inside, you can do that. It's perfectly fine. Once we have done that, we have to save the object into our library, and the name would be, I know the manufacturer, that's going to be, yeah, what's door webinar. Category should be indoor. Do you have to save this every time, is the question that you might be asking. Well, you don't have to save it, but if you do, you can open it up again and modify it, which I'm going to do in a second. So let me just save this into the library. Yes, I'm overwriting the original one. Obviously, I already tried this before I came here. So let me just delete this door. I don't need that. And I don't have to delete it actually, I can just change it to something else. Let me just go to the door library, and instead of flush, look for something else. The name was Yafholt, and it was the one with the, I think that was the one. Yeah, there you go. I don't want to change the dimensions, and here we go. So that is actually how you create a customized door. But now the question arises, how do you create another version in which the inset is not on the side, it's in the middle? So that is when this very handy tool comes in, that you have saved this element into the library, because then you can just open it up, go to the context menu, go to opening properties. Before I do, let me just show you something. If you go to properties, you go to the regular door and window properties where you can change the sizes, you can change the 2D representation, material, etc. But that is not the door wizard. If you want to go back to the door wizard, you click on the door, go to the context menu, and go with opening properties, and that takes you back to the door wizard. So that is the way to do it. So the thing that we want to do now is, I think we are satisfied with the sizes, but the only thing I want to change really is the insets position. So I go right away to inset and look for another way to position it. And I think this time, I don't have the sizes, but I have it in my guide, so I know what I'm doing. It's going to be 37 centimeters from one side and 37 centimeters from the other side as well. So here we go. So in this case, you don't have to add the width of the inset because the software calculates that based on the two sides values. Top and bottom offsets are good to go. So I'm just going to say, okay, that's good for me, and I have it like that. I haven't saved that, which was not what you're supposed to do. You have to go back to the library, sorry, like that. So you go to the opening properties and go with save. And save it as something else, maybe door number 11 and center light. There you go. In fact, let's make an experiment and let's draw a wall and start collecting the doors that we have created, because otherwise at the end we won't see the amazing number of doors we have just created. So that was the first one. It was looking like that. So here we go. So that's number 1. And that was one with the center light. Let's just flip it the same direction. And now the next task, I want to create a door which has a different type of insets. Let me just collect the doors. Yeah, look nice. Apparently I changed the material for some of them, so that's why it looks different. So the next one is, so see one, oh sorry, if this happens, which mistakenly I thought that maybe the materials were different. If this happens, it means that the representation style was changed from consistent color to something else, to realistic. So if you go back to consistent color, then everything should look the way it's supposed to. So I have one door with side light, one in the middle, and the next task, I want to create one which has 3 different panels. Now for this, I imported an image and I redrafted the image, so it looked like that. And as a result, I sort of extracted the 3 insets and I positioned them as 3 rectangles. Now the question is, how do I add the 3 rectangles to the door wizard, and how do I add them as insets? Now there are again many ways, more ways than one. What I always like to do is that I dragging and dropping one of the doors from the library. I say place door window not hosted in a wall, and now I can just go straight into the properties. So when it comes to 3 insets, there are 2 ways to proceed. One is that you go to the insets and you add additional insets. But in this case, this is a special case because the 3 insets are sort of belonging together. So you need to have a way to handle them together. And for that, I need to save them as groups. Or sorry, more like profiles. Let me just have a glass of water. If you go to drafting, you can go to new profile and go with define multiple profile. Now, if you do that, profile definition we have talked about before, so this is just a reminder. If you do define multiple profile, you can have multiple profiles which are not necessarily connected to each other. Here's how it works. You click on the element. There's an explanatory work here, text here, but I'm going to show you anyway what you have to do. You have to click on the paint bucket and identify the inner point of an area, which I'm doing like this, And now the software tells me, okay, where is the insertion, the reference point of this item that we just recognized? It's here in the top left. And now I again click on the bucket, click again, designate the insertion point again, and click on the, sorry, I misclicked. Here we go. So I click on the third one, click on the edge, and now I'm finished with the 1, 2, 3 panels, like that. And I'm just going to hit finish again. And now I have to save this. So this should be Yaffle's profile 3 rectangular. Again, I'm making a screenshot of that just to be 100% sure. The library, I think this is good, but it's not going to be a beam. It's going to be a door. Producer is generic. Okay, so far so good. Now what comes next? I go to the door, what I have, and go to the opening properties, and here at the inset, instead of using the automated profile, which is a rectangle, I go with the plus icon, and now I'm looking for in my library for the group or the profile that I want to override the original rectangle with. So I'm just going to say Yaffle's, and it's going to be this, Yaffle's profile number 3 rectangular, like that. Okay, but this is a problem here. So even though I defined how the profile should look like, they are too narrow. So why is that? Well, that is because the software has presets here, sort of inherited from the earlier version of the door, when it had sort of like a regulation for 37 centimeters from one side and 37 centimeters from the other side. So it sort of squeezes the profile into this very narrow area. So in this case, I have to override these values, and I say that the left and right offset should be 17 and 17 centimeters, like that. And the top bottom, I have to change as well, so it's going to be 32 centimeters from the bottom, and 56, no, sorry, from the top, and 56 centimeters from the bottom. And here we go, I have the result. Again, I go with save, and it's going to be Yaffle's door 11 and 3 insets. Always try to save them separately, otherwise you might get rid of the original copies. So let's just hit OK. And now we go back to this wall, and sort of we collect the latest addition to our collection, which would be the 3 insets one, dragging and dropping it, and putting it into the wall like this. So this is the next step, sort of like in our journey to create additional door types. There's one other door on my agenda, actually 2, which I have to work with, and in this case this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 insets. So that works the same way. We just go to the group definition, we define multiple groups, and in this case it's going to be 5 of them. So again, clicking on the element, clicking on the paint bucket, defining the insertion points. Again, this you have to do 5 times, but I could be using what I have already saved into my library, but I want to show you the whole story anyway, and that way I can illustrate that it is in fact very easy and fast to create a group like that. This actually not only is limited to doors and windows, you can use this option to create any kind of multiple profiles, maybe for columns or wall definition. So this is the way to do it. Hit finish, finish again, and I'm just going to say this is another Yaffle's profile, but this time it's 5 of these guys. So it's not going to be a beam, it is a door. And I go back, and I again put down one of the doors, or I use this door over here, which I have used as a sample to sort of keep on butchering it. I go to, not to the properties of course, I go to opening properties, and I go to panel, well, panel I don't want to change, I am satisfied with the material. I go to inset, and this time I'm going to use another profile, which is going to be Yaffle's number with the 5 insets, like that. Again, I have to change the offsets because otherwise I end up with something weird. It doesn't look good. So I'm just saying 16 centimeters from the left and 18 centimeters from the right, and it should be top bottom should be 18 and 18, I think, and that way you end up with the right sizes, just like that. Okay, and again there's another addition for our library, which would be create similar, and I just put it right here. Okay, you might be asking, what is the point of using rules to define where the actual insets are? Well, that is because when you create a larger version of this door, the insets position would be kept. Let me show what I mean. Let me make another version of this door. It's going to be much larger than this. So let's just say create similar, and I'm going to put it right here. And this time I'm making an insanely large version. Excuse me for that. It's not going to look good, but that is the point what I want to make. So let's just go to the doors properties and change the sizes to a larger one. Now here's what happens. Even though the door has changed in terms of size, the insets are sort of squeezed out, but the offsets are still the same as the original one. Let me just show you like this. So the offset here is the very same as here. So this is why we call this a parametric door design method, because that way if you create the door like this, then no matter what you are going to do with this later on, the regulations, the sort of like the binding is going to stay the same way. Let me just get rid of this ugliness and go on with my model and look for something this. So again, this is a very interesting shape here. I have a door with two very narrow side lights. So this, how do I create that? Well, partly it's similar, but partly it's different, of course. So let's just go with the groups that we were creating from this and go with define multiple profiles and go with the paint bucket again. Click on the side, click on the reference point, and again click on the side light reference point, and I think I'm now even done with this. And it's going to be, what should be the name? It should be Yaffles narrow strips in the door category. So here's a trick I learned during the way. So if you want to create sort of like insets which are not entirely going through the door, this is the same tool that you will be using. So again, you go to, I'm keep opening up properties, forgetting that you should instead go to opening properties. So once you go to inset, you can just go with another item in your library, which would be this narrow was the keyword here. Okay. And here's what happens. Even though these are two narrow strips, they appear as large ones because the offset left-right are demanding the insets to appear like that. So this you have to change to something else. So the distance from the left would be 0.7, so it's 70 centimeters, and from the right it should be 14 centimeters. And now they are appearing nicely, but they are not reaching the top and the bottom. So I'm changing this to another value, 0.01, so it should be 1 millimeters. And 1 millimeters as well. Well, not that fond of the color, to be honest, so I need to change some things, and for example I need to get rid of the inset edge profile. This time I don't need that. And another thing I have to change is the inset's thickness. Inset thickness, it sounds like a tongue twister. Last thing I want to change is maybe the color, so I'm going with the paint bucket. Copper red maybe, so this way it's not going to be transparent. It's a very good trick that you could be using while you're working and saving it into the library. It's going to be Yaffles door 11 narrow strips, and the last thing is that we are going to position it like that. So I think if I'm not sure where I put it, so I'm just going to go with the Yaffles, and I'm looking for the one with the narrow strips on the side, and just dragging and dropping it from wall endpoint into the plan. Let me just position it, change the operating direction. By the way, if you want to change the operating direction later on, you can just click on the door and flip it with the left and right tool like that. So this is the way you do it. So let me just recap what we have done so far. We imported images, and I showed you how to turn an image into a door quickly and painlessly, most importantly. Then I showed you how to import an element from the 3D warehouse and turn it into a door, which actually behaves like a door, meaning that you can position it into the wall, and sort of the wall would be cut. Very important thing I haven't mentioned, you are not able to close these doors. So you're not able to move them as doors, and that is because this is the way the object was created. So since this was not created in ARCHLine, there's no way we could be, closing it, but that's just something you have to sacrifice in favor of not having to create this on your own. And last thing I showed you is the door wizard, where we created these wonderful inset doors. And again, you don't have to do this work because you can work with elements that others have created, but if you have the time, invest it into using the door wizard, because that way you are going to create elements which are looking exactly the way you need them to be, and most importantly, you can open them up as well. So you can say that this is actually open. So wonderful. It's all parametric, it's all there. So there you have it. That is what I wanted to show you during this sort of like an advanced session on how to create doors. And I see there's a couple of questions, so let me go through them. So question here. Importing windows and doors from external sources, 3D warehouse, etc. do not give you a parametric item, and if their dimensions are changed, the frames are stretched. Exactly. So PlanMan 3D has it right, and that is a value judgment you have to be making. If you want to have an element which looks like a door and can be positioned into the wall, and you don't want to mess with creating it, then the 3D warehouse is the way to go. But if you have the time and you want to have a fully parametric item, then you can create that with the door wizard, and that way it will be parametric, just like I showed you with the doors changing sizes. Question: can you show how to leave it as an object? In its properties cut and stretch option, you can select which direction you want to stretch it. Let's circle back and let's go back to this element. I think I might have already deleted it, so let me just download it again, because I'm not 100% sure where I put it. So let's just go back to the 3D warehouse and save it into the software, and it's going to be this time an object. Let me just make spin, I think was the name of the creator. Make spin number 2, I guess. So I think I misspelled it. Make spin 2. There was no space between the two words. So let's just look for the item again. Download it. So when you're downloading something, you have several choices and options. We go back to the very basics now. And when you want to resize something before you save it, you can do that. And if you resize, let's say this door into a 4 meter long, or in the case wide door, you can do that, and the software tries its best to sort of scale it, resize it. Now, when you are resizing something, how does the software know in which direction it's make it larger? So this is the so when you click on an element, you have two arrows, the blue vertical and horizontal ones, and it has arrowheads. And if you click on the arrowheads, that's the way the software is going to move the endpoint. So if you now decrease this back to 3 meters, then the endpoint is going to be snapped closer. So let me just hit enter, and you see this is how you can govern it. So if I change the size like this, let's say I change it to 3 meters, then this point is going to move upwards and not this point moves downwards, if you know what I'm getting at. So that is what you're looking for. If you want to sort of resize something, then you can do that also here. Now, I suggest you could use it as an object as well, but if you want to make sure that the wall is going to be cut, then you have to save it as a door. Now, I think that was an answer to there's an option for into which direction it's going to be stretched. These arrowheads are the ones. If you want to flip them, you just click on them and they are going to be flipped. Another question. Do you have a ready library of doors and windows which we can use immediately to model and specify the BIM information later if we do not have the BIM object of the manufacturer's doors and windows? Well, actually, yes. The software comes with an object library. So these objects that you see by default, let me just go back to the beginning with this house icon and click on door. These objects that you see are the factory made ones that we are shipping with the software. So if you have, I don't know, an object like this, and you want to change its properties, you have the BIM parameters already set up here. So that's something that we already did on your behalf. So yes, the software does come with a built-in library. And yes, there's my colleague Ilyes is helping me with one of the questions, and he said about the cut and edit and stretch options, that you can use the cut and stretch options in the object properties panel at the right bottom section. And I'm not entirely sure where that is, but I think that was what I just showed you here. And he adds something to the beam parameters. To model beam windows, you can use any of the tools and add beam data. Well, that's the last thing I haven't showed you actually, is how to add additional elements to the beam library items. So if you have a door like this and you have the beam parameters, you can just click add parameter and you can add any kind of parameter you want. Maybe heat retention or manufacturer's item number. And there's a question about, will there be a webinar on HVAC? Well, that's the thing, is that conceptual, let me just think about, when it comes to HVAC, we did cover that with a webinar where we talked about conceptual HVAC. We called it MEP, mechanical, electrical and pipeline, I think, or plumbing was is the sort of like a solution for this acronym. If you go to the webinar website and you scroll a little bit downwards, you can find a show which was all about MEP and HVAC design, and it was, I'm not entirely sure when this was aired, but I think it was late last year. It was conceptual MEP design with ARCHLine.XP, where we showed how to make electrical plans and how to make sort of like a heat exchanger unit, creating a network like the one you see on the screen. So that is what we did. I think it was late last year when we created this show. And that is what I wanted to cover. Today's session, like I said, was all about doors and windows. And if you feel a little bit lonely about this current way of working from home, then do not despair, because the next session that we are going to have will be all about how to work together with others, because it's going to be about teamwork and how to work on the same projects at the same time with the peers of yours, fellow architects, or maybe interior designers, electrical engineers. So you could be open up the very same projects, and real time you could be working on the same content, and that way none of your work is going to be duplicated, and you can track the progress of your design. So that would be delivered on Thursday by my colleague Ilyes, who's just overexcited to deliver this topic for you, because this is a new addition to the software, came not that long ago, and you need to know how to use that. If you are working in an office where many ARCHLine users are, then you need to know how to work together with them. And I have another few comments coming in about another lesson to keep you out of mischief for a while, and it was useful. I'm happy to see that these shows are useful. So if you want to check the upcoming shows, you can go to the website and see what we have planned. Like I said, on Thursday we have one on teamwork, and then we proceed with lighting plans, suspended ceilings, curtain walls, frame walls, all kinds of interesting stuff. So see you on Thursday and the upcoming shows. And if you like the show, leave us a positive reply or comment or like and subscribe and all the things you would do on YouTube land. And if you have any questions what I haven't answered you, feel free to write me an email. I think most of you already have my email address. So reach out to us, tell us what you would like to hear about, and see you for the next show. Thank you for your attention. Until next time.